Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to do a bit of a line and wash demonstration with a bit of ink and watercolour, which is my favourite medium to use, as you guys may already know. So here I am just taking a bit of masking tape and applying that to my sketchbook page. I don't usually do this, but for the photograph that I found here, I think it works kind of nicely. I am sipping on a nice handcrafted beer whilst I do this because alcohol is once again legal to purchase here in South Africa, so I am celebrating that with a nice beer from a local brewery called Agar's Brewery, who make wonderful beers. So that's why I'm doing that. So I have just found this picture on Pinterest. It is, still somewhat tricky to get out too much to do some urban sketching further than the house due to the pandemic. And also the weather here, which is shocking. It should actually be really beautiful right now because it is summertime here in South Africa, but it's basically been raining for the last 2 weeks. So it's probably why I've been in a bad mood for a couple of weeks, maybe. So yeah, anyway. So I am just still kind of, there is value in finding photos on the internet and just trying to hone your craft. For example, I don't even know if I've ever attempted to paint a snowy mountain scene before, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I've just drawn out the basic shapes of the mountain and the little hut and stuff like that in pencil, which hopefully you can kind of see. And I've just got a flat brush here and I'm just wetting the sky areas, so just painting around the mountains. I've actually turned my sketchbook upside down just to see what kind of wet and wet effects I can get. I'm just using a indigo colour here because I thought that would be quite nice for the sky. But I didn't want to do the sky too dark just because I want the mountain to stand out quite starkly against it. So I'm just letting things drip. I really don't know, how this is going to come out at this point. I'm just sort of like messing around, just kind of see what kind of wet effects we can get. It obviously looks like a kind of damp, snowy kind of situation. So I was just trying to see if I could reflect that in the sky. But I'm adding more and more pigment and realizing I'm going far too dark on this, but we will address that later on. So, if you're thinking, whoa, she's going way too dark, then I'm also thinking that too. So, of course, now just flicking in some clean water just to give it that really nice textural effect for like rain and stuff or snow. So I'm just going to let that dry a bit. I'm just going to try to move the paint around a bit, just make it more spontaneous, see what happens. So I let it dry a bit, but not totally, because I'm mixing up some colours to come down and paint the hut now anyway. So that's far away from the sky, so we don't need to worry about the colours blending into each other or anything. So I'm mixing up like kind of a nice goldeny yellow colour, using my Mungyo paints here actually, because there's a nice yellow ochre and a nice bright yellow in this set, which I don't necessarily have in my St. Petersburg White Night set, which is my main set. So these Mungyo have come in quite handy to have actually, just because they just have colours that I don't have in my normal painting set. So I've found myself reaching for it time to time, but again, I'm just working in my sketchbook, so it doesn't matter that they're student grade or aren't light fast or whatever, doesn't matter. I'm just messing around in my sketchbook. So now I'm doing the foreground element, which is kind of the water and the water just in front of the hut, and I'm just using like a I think it is just called turquoise, that's in my White Night set, and I really love this colour. I don't use it very much because it's kind of very strong and I guess only suitable for certain subjects, but I love it so much. It's really nice. So I'm just adding some clean water to the mountain just where the snowy parts are, because I'm going to come in and do a wet and wet technique and with this indigo colour, and I thought it would kind of lend itself quite nicely to sort of keeping those areas fairly pale, but like blending with soft edges and stuff. I did try this a while back with some leaf pattern I was doing with the white pattern on the leaf, just painting water over that and then letting the dark green that I was using sort of seep around it, and it worked quite nicely. So I thought that might work quite nicely here too, just to try and give it a bit more of an organic effect really, rather than doing hard white lines or white edges. So again, I'm just trying to, this wasn't that successful, but I was just trying to like blend in the edge of that mountain just so it kind of blends into the sky a bit. I was looking at the photo and I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if I can get that, but then I don't know, maybe I should have done it sooner in the process. It didn't work out too much, but that's fine. I'll come back and fix that later, so it's okay. So I'm also looking at this photograph, which again is just such a gorgeous photograph, and just trying to simplify what I'm seeing so I don't overwork the picture or don't overwhelm it with all these little details. So I think that's a skill in itself, is just learning how to simplify things so you can kind of get a maximum graphic effect, which I do feel like this picture is very graphic, you know, and it's very like lots of blues and then contrasted with that yellow of the hut. It's just very striking. I do think I've drawn the hut a little bit too big in relation to the mountain. That's one thing I definitely would change if I did this again, because I always like to look at my sketches and go, okay, I mean, you know, that's fine, but like, what would I do better next time? You know, in a constructive way, you know, not beating myself up that maybe it's not as good as I wanted it to be or whatever, but just like, if I did this picture again, what would I change, you know? And I think if I did paint this picture again, I would love to do it on bigger paper, so I could really get the scale of the hut versus the mountain. I think that would be like really cool. Didn't really know what I was doing with these rocks in the foreground, but I'm just kind of mixing different colours. So I'm not sure if it shows up so well on the camera, but I was going from indigos, then mixing in a bit of sepia, and just trying to really vary the shades. I think I even used a bit of purple as well, just really trying to vary the shades of the rocks so they're not all the same colour, just to give it a bit of variation. And I was really enjoying painting this whole scene with this flat brush. Very occasionally I just like to do that. Something calls to me and I just want to use this flat brush. And I think for this scene where there's a lot of straight edges, it just worked really well. So I actually just recently cut the handle off this brush so it actually fits in a pouch better, so I can carry it around with me. So I took a hacksaw to it and just made it shorter. I don't know, just prefer short handles, I guess, and they do make them it makes it much more portable for traveling around. Not that I'm doing too much of that at the moment, but and now I'm using I've got a Copic brush pen, black brush pen, which is got waterproof ink in it. So if you're gonna use a brush pen over the top of or in conjunction with watercolors, it's probably a good idea that it's waterproof, unless you're going for the look where it kind of is water soluble and kind of blends in with the paint, but that's definitely not what I was going for. So and the nice thing about this Copic brush pen is that it's got an actual nylon brush tip, so it really does feel like a brush. But I have it for no other reason than that's all that was in the shop. I usually get just a standard Pigma Micron brush pen and that works fine, but they didn't have them, so that's why I got this one. So now I'm just using my Lamy All-Star fountain pen, just putting in some of the lines of the wood of the hut in there, just to give it a bit more detail. So, and now I'm using a white Posca pen, which is like a paint marker, because it's nice and thick, and I thought it would just edge those windows, the white window frames, really nicely, better than a gel pen would. You know, it's thicker and sort of a smoother, more opaque effect, so I think that worked quite nicely. When I needed the finer lines, then I went in, here I go in with my white gel pen just to get the finer window pane lines. The Posca paint marker that I'm using, the size of it is a PC3M. So if you are looking at Posca pens, they're all different sizes, so that's the one I've used for this sketch, if that's helpful information to you guys. And you can see I'm just using it in areas where I feel like it needs a bit more light, and certain posts maybe need a bit more definition. I don't really have a plan with this. I'm just sort of looking at the picture, my photo reference. I'm looking at this picture. I'm like, oh, where can I add some white? And the nice thing about this Posca pen is I used it a bit on some white paint there, and it actually really feathers out quite nicely. That was kind of an unexpected but nice effect that I was getting there. So I'm really looking at the photo, just trying to look at where those sort of snowy cracks go. I'm just trying to not overwork it though. I think it would be easy to add quite like too much at this stage. This is really just a case of looking and like where does it need it, or like where is it on the photo reference, you know. So I think I was in danger of doing too much here, so I think I stopped just at the right time. And I'm just sort of hopping back and forward between, you know, the brush pen and the white Posca, just trying to, you know, get the lights and shadows and depth that I'm looking for. And I'm just putting a bit of white into the water just to show a few reflections. So I decided to put an indigo as the shade here. But I don't know how it overlaid with the yellow so well. I wasn't overly happy with that decision. It kind of turned to a bit of a green, which is understandable overlaying blue with the yellow. It didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to. And I'm just trying to blend in the white and the blue on the mountain a bit more, to try and make it look a bit more organic. So I wasn't too happy with the sky. I felt like it needed to be a bit whiter. So I actually decided to take my white gouache and mix up some of that. I'm using my Skoda Reserva round brush and just adding a bit of white gouache onto the top of it, just to lighten it up a bit, really. Just to make that mountain stand out just a bit more, give the whole scene a bit more contrast. And just sort of give it a bit more of a misty look. And then also my favourite, just adding a few splatters. So I just felt like I wanted to give the rocks a little bit more definition in places as well, because at the moment they just sort of looked like a bit of a dark mass, you know. I just wanted to give it a bit more shape. So you can see how it's just a case of switching back and forwards between different implements, adding bits, and just keeping going, keeping working on it until you literally get to a point where you're maybe holding a pen or something and you're like, I have no idea what else to do. And then apparently that's when you should stop. So once you get to that point where you just like don't even know what to pick up anymore or don't know what to add, then you're done. You're done. I'm just adding a bit more extra turquoise in that water in front of the hut and darkening the foreground water a little more. I think I am reaching that point where it's like, yeah, I don't know, I'm just randomly picking things up and like not really knowing what to do with it anymore. So yeah, here we go. I think I'm done. Oh no, still going. Ah, that's right. I decided when I looked at the photo, I could see there was like white mountains behind the main mountain in the center. So I thought maybe I should just add a bit of white gouache on the side, just to really bring the edge of that mountain out. I have heard in more kind of classical painting videos or whatever that having your lightest lights next to your darkest darks can really add that like super pop of contrast, you know. So I think I kind of had that in my head actually, to add the white to the side of that mountain would really make it pop forward a bit more. So it's still quite wet here at the moment, on the sky and stuff like that, so I am going to just let it dry, because I don't want to take the tape off and then the water go everywhere. But yeah, this is the finished sketch, and do you know what? I didn't know how this was going to turn out when I went into it. I was just like, I'm just going to do it, I'm just going to hit record. Haven't done a scene like this ever, maybe. And I was really, really happy with the effects, and I think it's something I want to try more of, actually. I think I'd love to have a go at this on bigger paper and maybe get the proportion of the hut versus the mountain a bit better. But overall, I'm really happy with how the mountain looks in the background and the water in the foreground. So yeah, it was a happy experiment. So I'm just taking the tape off now, and definitely some of the water has seeped underneath it, but that's fine. I mean, it is just my sketchbook, and it has actually taken a tiny bit of the surface of the paper off as well as I was ripping it off. No matter how careful I am and how much I pre-stick the tape on my trousers and stuff like that, it still seems to take the surface of the paper off. So I've tried artist tapes, I've tried masking tape, I've tried all sorts of things. So and it also seems to depend quite a lot on what kind of paper you're using. So but yeah, the overall effect of the clean edges is there, so that's all good. And I'm glad I did that, because I think it really really gives the sketch like a nice finishing touch, you know. So I'm just adding in the date on the bottom just to remind myself of when I did this one. And yeah, that's it, guys. I hope this has been interesting to watch and to see my process. As I said, I myself was just experimenting, so I encourage you to find a winter scene and try sketching some mountains, or try doing something that you don't usually do. Try and push yourself out of your comfort zone, and see what you can come up with. So as always, my ebook is available to purchase. I won't go into too much detail about it, but the link is in the description below if you're interested. And do make sure that you check out urbansketchingworld.com, where I have loads of articles about urban sketching and ink and watercolour techniques. So go and check that out. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.